Hey there, welcome to the Impatient Entrepreneur Podcast, a show where we hear from entrepreneurs and business owners who are chomping at the bit to make their mark on the world. I'm your host, Lauren Kwedar Cockrell. Now, let's hurry up and get to the good stuff. Hi, friends. You are in for a treat today. Or, well, I am, because while every guest is special in their own way, I'm not sure anyone will be able to top today's guest. I've known today's guest longer than anyone on the show. Since the summer of 1984, to be precise. I am the very proud sister of the one and only Greg Kwedar, and I'm so thankful you joined us on the podcast. Greg, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Hey, sister.
Hi. Oh, my goodness. Will you tell our listeners and mom and dad might even listen to this one. Hi, parents. Will you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? You probably have one of the more unique careers of some of our guests. So tell us about you.
Hi, Mom, and hi, potentially Dad. I'm a writer, director, and producer, primarily of narrative feature films. Been doing it since 2008, and I really pursue stories of human connection in impossible places that hopefully make our world a little more possible for us to see each other.
I just got hit with a wave of emotion. All right, we are a minute in, and I'm already wiping tears away. Oh my goodness. So I think sometimes people forget that this is a business. I mean, you're basically, you are an entrepreneur in, maybe not the same way as someone with, a brick and mortar building with W-2s and 1099s walking in and out the door. So while selfishly I wanted you on this show so I could talk to you, I also love the idea of thinking about people's businesses that maybe we don't always they don't always compute as a business. So with that in mind, do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Actually, I consider myself a serial entrepreneur in that
yes, you are.
I've started, run and realized at this point in my career over 6 businesses. Each film is its own entity. We create a sole purpose vehicle to raise the capital for those to then create the film and then to exploit it in the market and to bring it to an audience. And so some happen relatively quickly. Most, in my case, tend to take a while, many years. But and then I have several other businesses that I've tried to start, i.e., films that I've tried to start that may only ever live as PDFs and never as movies, and then I have some that are just on that gestation period and that will emerge when their time is right.
The incubation period.
Oh yeah.
So the incubators for all these entrepreneurs out there. Well, good. So that makes it much easier to ask my first formal question, which is, would you say you're an impatient entrepreneur?
Yes, but I feel like I am. I maybe not enlightened, but I'm a more mature, impatient entrepreneur. I'm learning more about movies or projects finding their moment and kind of knowing when it's time, and when it's not. I used to try to will, and there always is an aspect of willpower and everything I do, and the sort of, I think, to survive in my particular business, which is extremely competitive, is the persistence element, the endurance element, and the relentlessness it takes to succeed is absolutely there. But there are places to put your energy that are good places, and places where you're putting your energy in the wrong place, and it just kind of it can turn you cynical, it can turn you bitter, it can drive you crazy, because you're just throwing yourself against a wall over and over again, when maybe if you turn to the left or the right, you might have found another path, for project or something else to spend your time on, until that kind of moment hits to strike.
Yeah. 'Cause I'm sitting here thinking, control is an illusion, of course, but in my business day to day, I have quote unquote control, because if I make a decision this way or that way, there's an outcome. You have a lot of cooks in your kitchen. What percentage would you say you control, or any given film?
Yeah, well, so I have I think it's important to mention, because it's absolutely critical to any success I've had, is the team I've worked with. Particularly, I've had a long-standing creative partnership with an artist named Clint Bentley, who's also a writer, director, and producer. And the way our relationship has evolved since our first film together, this movie called TRANSPECOS, that came out in 2016, but we had worked on for 6 years previously to that. And that's really where our friendship bloomed, and our, the way that we worked together emerged. And what's unique about a relationship that's very different that we find in the film business is there's a lot of writer directors who have a producer partner. There's a lot of writing partners. There's even directing duos out there. But what's unique about our relationship is that we both write together, and then we're both independent directors. And so when one is directing a film, the other then takes a supporting role and produces the project, and then we'll sort of flip on the next film. And and it's really dependent on kind of who usually originated the idea, who has it deepest in their marrow or their soul. But as someone who's kind of grown up always used to being in charge in some capacity, captain of the team or president of the student body or whatever it is, that kind of, I've become such a better filmmaker and business person by having to learn how to submit to another leader and to learn from another leader, and to take second position, and be in support of something. And when I came back around to directing my most latest film, after having done that been a producer for Clint, I was way more open, and just at ease through the process, and not feeling like I had to have my hands on everything, control everything. And I think it really showed in the final work.
Yeah, that's I think in business or in art, finding your lane and finding a team that can be the experts in their role and you focus on what you need to focus on is such an important part of figuring it all out.
Yeah, there's a couple catchphrases related to that I've really internalized. Like, one is control or growth.
Love that.
And that has been really valuable to me, in thinking about the power of what happens when you invite people into your process to expand the vision to something you never thought was possible. So.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think a lot of people on their journeys can resonate with that on either side. Like you can hold on with an iron fist, and that you'll have a business. Maybe you'll love that business, or project or whatever. But as you do release that control, you'll achieve beyond your imagination.
And I get the fear, because oftentimes our businesses we start or the movies we make, there's something really soft, and it comes from something that's very soft inside you and very precious, and it's actually a place of love and vulnerability. In the exposure to that and inviting in people into that, the fear is that they'll either take it, or they'll dismiss it or they'll hurt it. And I think a lot of our desire to sort of protect that ends up compromising its ability to bloom and flourish. And also I think about, in terms of partnership, the other catchphrase sort of delegate or die, and identifying what is the skill you have that is that you sort of uniquely imprinted on you, that is like your special thing that that you can do that no one else can. And then there's oftentimes around that, in the effort to have that thumbprint on everything and control, actually there's so much others that there are either people way better at that gifting than you, that or you just or that a lot of people could do. And if you delegated those other tasks and you protected this thing, or put your time into this thing that no one else could do as well as you on this earth, that's like a path to, I think big growth in the work that you do.
Do you and Clint, having had this partnership for a long time now, do y'all have written rules for engagement for your partnership, as far as, what I say goes here versus here, or is it all kind of organic and you just trust each other and away you go? Or
there's always been a period of growing pains. We had sort of outlined, a vision and a mission that was pretty clear. And I think we knew what our particular strengths that we were bringing to the team were, that in the sort of Venn diagram of each other. For that really began in writing, in our early days of writing. Like, I was someone who was a story generator, who really thought about architecture of like where a film was going, and the sort of macro picture. And he was a master of people and dialogue and character growth and thematic resonance. And those two fit together so beautifully, and I think made our films so much stronger than we would be alone. And you also kind of see that spin into our leadership styles as well, and the producing and directing, and he can be, like I always say, like, he's like a watchmaker, such a tinkerer, and to work on every little thing, like over and over. And I'm just like someone who's just charging forward, bring as many people as possible. And that there's times when it's really helpful for us to do just that, to kind of just like bulldoze our way through an obstacle. And then there's times to like really sit and think and be patient and calibrate.
Yeah, I know, especially in the business world, partnerships can be tricky. And from an outside view, watching y'all, it's always been so beautiful. I know we all have our moments of nee. But y'all have certainly seems to have figured it out. Will you tell our listeners about your most recent film that we just got to see the premiere of?
So this is a movie that we've been working on for over 7.5 years, called Sing Sing. And it's the story of a theater program inside of a maximum security prison at Sing Sing in New York. It's one of the world's most famous prisons. And it's the story of this group of incarcerated actors who every 6 months they try to stage a play inside of Sing Sing. They've been doing it for over 20 years, and have done all the classics from Shakespeare to On the Waterfront, A Few Good Men. But we tell the story of one of the only originals that they ever did at Sing Sing in 2005 for 2 nights only, which was a time traveling musical comedy called Breaking the Mummy's Code. And it's this wacky play with pirates and gladiators and the Black Plague and a Hamlet soliloquy and dance numbers and rap numbers. But But at its core, the movie is about a real life friendship between these two men, who couldn't have been more different or needed more different things from the program, Divine G and Divine I, who, through the course of this production, become something closer than family, and need each other in these deep and profound ways. And that's a little bit about the film, but we shot it. The unique aspect of there's several unique aspects of how we made the film. Primarily, that outside of a few established actors, including the Emmy winner Coleman Domingo and Academy Award nominee Paul Raci, the majority of our cast are actually formerly incarcerated people who are graduates of that program who came back and played sort of versions of themselves in the film.
Mm-hmm. It is so beautiful. I got to watch it for the first time holding your newborn daughter last December in your living room, and just was so moved by it then. And it was, you maybe had some music, but it was like placeholder music.
Yeah.
No top and tail or anything.
Yeah.
And just was so proud of you then. But then to get to see it in Toronto with, was it 1,500 people? 1,200? Sorry, embellishing. Never really got a firm number on that. 1,200 people, and with the score and all those people watching it for the first time. The woman next to me started crying halfway through and then didn't stop. I kept deciding whether I wanted to, do I need to hand her this crumpled napkin that has popcorn juice on it or not? Because she didn't have a Kleenex. And of course, I got swept away and needed it myself. Then what the credits rolling and everyone, you got your standing ovation, which according to you and everybody else does not happen at TIFF. 4 minutes long, and then when the audience realized as the credits roll that the men were playing themselves, just you could feel this like wave of emotion roll off of everybody, and I'm like shaking, holding my camera, crying. It was just, oh man, definitely a top moment. It was so it was so cool. So let's sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just to add on to that, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I've been fortunate to have been a part of a few standing ovations, for work that I've been involved with. But there was something really cathartic and communal happening in that moment, and I mean, I certainly the film plays a role in that, but I think also movies sometimes meet a moment, and I don't know what that is. I think people just desiring something more humane, something that is recognizing that while many of the people in that audience, probably most, have never been incarcerated, I think people, in light of the last few years from the pandemic through all of the political division, you name it, economic trials, like we feel like we're sort of sometimes inside of prisons of our own design, and that we yearn for this freedom, we yearn for someone else to recognize our own pain and to reach out and say, do you need help? And I think the movie unlocked something like in that was shared in this room. And then the greatest gift being that we had a lot of our cast who were formerly incarcerated, who were playing themselves. They saw that in the credits, and then those people walked out on stage and acknowledged to the audience all those things that were being felt and put words to it, and it was just magic. Like it was I don't know that I'll encounter a moment like that again in my career.
And to be clear, you weren't doing these men just a favor to include them in the movie. They were outstanding actors. I mean, I think that's what took people by surprise was that these were these real men. It was like, holy crap. They were incredible.
For a bit of backstory, I and my partner Clint, part of the reason this took as long as it did to come to life was the work that it took to, one, find a way to tell the story in the most honest way and the most inclusive way. But and the journey to that was first by becoming volunteer teachers inside the program, and so we taught acting inside of one of the maximum security prisons that this program RTA works in New York. And that's the first thing you recognize as soon as you're in the room is extraordinary talent, an extraordinary desire for connection and to be present and to learn again and to be fed opportunities to better themselves. And that just kind of that just carried on for these people who are part of this program. It carried on as they came home from prison, and that is absolutely a marker of how they're living their lives now outside in the world. And so yes, as you said, it was not we were not doing them a favor by casting this film. They lifted this project. It wouldn't be what it is without this cast of people.
Right. I have two follow-on questions for that. One, remind me of the statistic of those who travel through that program, their recidivism rate compared to those who don't.
Yeah, and just for your listeners who don't know what recidivism means a person's likelihood to reoffend and be incarcerated again, usually within 5 years of their release from prison. In our country, that percentage is over 67% of people will come back to prison. People who are serving long bids will come back to prison within 5 years of their release. Graduates of RTA, less than 3% ever go back.
Incredible.
Yeah.
The second follow-on question I wanted to ask was, I know you, and I really don't know all the ins and outs of this one. I know you did something different with how you structured pay around this film.
Yeah. Yeah. This could be a whole other podcast. So I'll be a little focused here, but we started this is my third film with Clint, and on our first film, we did it very traditionally. The financial structure was very traditional to how other independent films are made around the country, which means, the producers essentially have the budget of a film, and they go out and independently negotiate with everybody on the movie, from the movie stars to the crew and so on. And, it's all kept very confidential. Only the star and the producers will know their pay, and the star's agents, and that extends all the way through a movie. And what I've found, because I was a former accounting major before filmmaker, and when I came into the business, another long story. When I came into the business, one of the things I first realized was just the lack of transparency. And the amount of waste, not much really showing up on the screen. And what was, this idea that every artist is sort of in their own silo, and because they are, and they don't know, the full structure of how the movie is operating, it sort of just creates a culture of distrust. But it's also so baked. It's everyone, all lawyers, anyone, investors, anyone you work with in the business, agents, sort of just get told this is how it's done. And so on our first film, we largely followed that approach, and it led to a budget that was around $700,000, which isn't still a very low budget. And the movie comes out, was very much an indie success story, won a lot of awards, it was reviewed really well, but our investors never made their money back fully. And we started asking these questions of can we lower the risk for investors? But then we were also looking at all of our artists, and we're can we repair some of this scorched earth? Can we make it a healthier place to work and a more transparent one? We came up with this model essentially that we did on our last film, JOCKEY, and then really scaled up to Sing Sing. built on parity. And so the idea is that everyone on our film, from the star all the way through myself and as a director, all the way through our crew, our production assistants and entry level positions, all the way through post production, the composers, the editors, we all earn the same rate. And the only variable of someone being paid more or less is just time. We're still we're saying everyone sort of intrinsically has the same value on our movies. And what that does is it creates a culture where the best ideas can kind of come forward and be heard. That because it's not built on these sort of big stratified hierarchies that our business sort of has operated on for so long. And then we also collectively share ownership with the entire cast and crew. And so it allows our budgets to be far lower than how they are, because all the inflation that happens when everyone's in their own silos and negotiating for their own rates, it just drives personnel costs so high. So we cap those by everyone being on the same rate, but then in turn make them more fair for the people involved, and they have lifelong ownership stakes in our projects. And so it's allowed budgets to become lower, but also have a real chance to really work in the marketplace. And our last two films, Jockey previous and now Sing Sing, have already, immediately at the point of sale, turn really big profits for That's everybody awesome. Involved. And then that ownership is there for life.
I love that. And interestingly, I'm reading a book right now. It's from the Scaling Up ecosystem called Compensation. And I was just reading a part about, if you have an organization that thrives on competition, like, like sales or something like that, then pay discrepancy is almost encouraged because they're competing to drive the project forward. But if you need collaboration to be successful, then actually discrepancy hurts you, just like you're saying. So if you need people to work together, there needs to be a lot of equity and parity. So it's interesting to have you. I've come to that conclusion on your own.
That's a really powerful framing device. Yeah, I'll have to read more about that. That's amazing.
I'll share it with you. Yeah, no, I'm thinking, doing a lot. Really, the point of the book is to be very creative in how you think about compensation, and that money is not, obviously we all need to be paid fairly to have a living wage and take care of our families and all that. But beyond that, there is a tipping point at which more money doesn't yield the result you think it will, that it's really about that connection, about that goal and everything. So anyway, side note. But speaking of money, something exciting happened for you at the end of TIFF with Sing Sing.
Yes, we were acquired out of the festival by A24, which is a company that's only been around for 10 years, but is doing, transformative things in distribution and taking really kind of this bastion of independent film that, in an era where so much of theatrical has gone to massive tent poles driven by comic books or whatever. And the rest of the kind of thoughtful filmmaking has migrated to television. They have found a way to bring people to theaters to see, thought-provoking, oftentimes dramatic movies that normally, have been, over the last decade or so, have been failing at the box office. They found a way to really succeed. And so they really fell for our movie, and it's going to be a very big priority for the company next year when they release it. And I couldn't have more faith in a team that's going to care for the film with the same sort of sensitivity and love with which we made it. It's pretty rare in the distribution game. A lot of distribution experiences I've had are pretty transactional. Someone kind of acquires the movie and then they're like, take it from here, kid. And
don't worry your pretty little head about that.
And you're like, well, I feel like the filmmakers understand their movies better than anyone else. And, yes, we're not marketers by trade or distribution experts, but I think successful campaigns really listen to the artist's intentions and really try to translate that into those new mediums and outlets.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I'm very proud of you.
Thanks.
And I know there are lots of people, there are lots of potential suitors in the premiere that night.
It was a competitive situation, which is, it's a rare position to be in when you have multiple bidders trying to take your movie out to the world. And, we definitely didn't take it for granted at all. And while A24 won the day, still a lot of love and respect for, the ones that put their hat in the ring.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice. So how do you find y'all's ideas? How do you find what you're going to work on or decide to work on?
Yeah. I mean, I wish it was an exact science.
Well, then it wouldn't be art.
Exactly. But I think for us, it starts with the world. It's a world that we want to slip behind the curtain of. And oftentimes it's a world you think you understand, that, you think you understand prison based on the films that have been done in the canon in the past. But where all those movies went in through the front door, we try to come in through a cellar door or a side window and present a side of it and potentially a deeper truth than anyone's ever seen. And part of that process is just bringing almost like a journalistic approach to that world, where what we like to say is we tell stories from the dirt up, and we're very interested in place and then the people that inhabit it. And we care a lot about those characters. And like we like to say, we're sort of community-based filmmakers. And that's, speaking of that, like transactional relationships with distribution, a lot of movies are transactional relationships with the settings that they operate in. And we try and create like a true exchange in those places. And then from that, from holding these sort of characters in worlds sacred, the thing we're not very sacred about is the story itself. And it's the thing we're least precious about. And oftentimes try on a lot of stories to try to find the right vehicle through that world. But we like to say, what is the arrow shot, through a world that becomes the narrative drive. And then the other thing that when we're looking at like what's something to step into is, again, these projects take so long oftentimes. I'm really driven by, and it's oftentimes a sense of when you're engaging with a project or world, will you have more questions at the end than you began with? Do you just get that feeling about it? Because they're a well that's so deep that you'll never reach the bottom of it. And it's just the journey of discovery through it that's going to feed you as an artist just as much as what the ultimate result will be as a completed film to an audience. That the story of the making of it could be just as interesting as the film itself. Like you're sort of listening for things that could meet those criteria, even though, they're not sort of fully defined.
Okay. Yeah. And are you able to share anything that you're working on right now?
Let's see. Yeah, there's a couple things. One for my partner Clint, we adapted a novel by this author Dennis Johnson, who is a National Book Award winner, a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and it's a beautiful book about logging in the early 1900s. But really, it's a story of this itinerant worker and his small family in the woods. They built this cabin, and he keeps going back and forth from the cut, chopping down these old growth forests. And on one such trip back, there's a great fire that's come through the valley, and his wife and daughter die in the fire. and his method of grieving is to rebuild their family home, log by log. And as soon as he finishes, he's visited by the ghost of his wife, who says, like, this is what happened to me, but actually our daughter lives. And there's all these rumors that have been going around of like a kid who's out in the woods that's been raised by wolves. And so the movie's about trying to find his daughter.
Oh wow.
And it's a beautiful piece. We're supposed to shoot next spring, and then for something completely different. Again, this gives you a sense of like worlds. There's a movie that we've been working on for a while that's about a secret government program that actually exists, that when we're flying over a country we're not supposed to be flying over, North Korea, Syria, Iran, Venezuela in the case of our story, and the plane goes down and you have to get your pilot out and everything fails, diplomacy, bribery, our special forces can't get there. The last resort is we activate an underground railroad of local citizens in that country, farmers, taxi drivers, tourism operators that we've trained to be spies, and said, the phone will probably never ring, but if it does and you get our pilot out of the country, you're an American citizen and multimillionaire upon delivery.
Wow.
And this actually exists, and we have it all over the world. And we wrote the script with one of the architects of this program. So all the stuff is super legit in it. But really, it's a movie about trust, kind of in a world of lies. Can people trust each other anymore?
I really want that one to be made.
Yeah.
I want to see it so badly.
Yeah. There's potentially some good news on the horizon.
Okay.
Someone very, very amazing just watched Sing Sing this weekend. Potentially star in the film. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. I know that's been a journey of its own.
Oh yeah.
Oh, what a labor of love every single one of these is. I mean, kind of back to the first question, are you impatient? You may be, but you can't be.
Well, and I'm, looking back on these, that story I just shared, that's a movie that sort of has come together and fallen apart a few times now. And in one case, particularly brutally, that movie was set up with a couple movie stars. It had the budget. We had, hired all the crew, and I was a couple days away from moving down to Latin America for prep, and the financing fell through, and the whole project kind of imploded. And at that point, I was devastated. I was kind of like creatively eviscerated. I felt just very empty artistically, because I was sort of like, this is the type of movie that should get made. It's like kind of like an action thriller. And I've been working on Sing Sing for several years at that point, and everyone in the industry was just saying like, it's not going to happen, and the only way it's going to happen is if you make it like every other prison movie, if you have like shankings and rape and all the other stuff that, has come to sort of drive a lot of the stereotypes of prisoners. And I almost sort of made this movie that I just told about. And when it imploded, this big realization emerged of like, this was the one that everyone told me I should be making. And even still, it's hard and impossible. And I was trying to kind of come back to life again and think about what to do next. And I realized, I've been asking that question of what should I do next for so long. And I needed to ask a new question. And the new question was, if I could only make one more film, what would it be? And at that moment, it was crystal clear that it was Sing Sing. Like that was the one that was always in my heart to do. And so then that sort of showed the time for Sing Sing, but I needed to kind of go through those trials and sort of face that. I might, if I made Sing Sing too early, I might have conceded and made it more like every other prison film. But by trying to make something in the system and seeing it not work, and realizing like my instincts, are what they are. And if it's impossible to make either, like make the one that's inside you.
Right.
And I think now coming back to this sort of more conventional, but hopefully really special action-y movie, I really just feel completely at ease to just make it on my own terms and to trust my instincts and not really listen to those voices that are, trying to bend it towards the traditional, and to let it be uniquely me.
Yeah. Shoulding all over you.
Yeah, exactly.
The shoulds. When others do it to us or we do it to ourselves, just there's nothing. I don't have any time for that.
Yeah.
You just potentially answer my next question beautifully, but you may have another story, but just in case I'll ask it, you can tell me if you already answered it. But like, what's one of the worst things that's happened to you in your business life that actually turned out to be like the best thing? Is that the answer?
Yeah. And there's a lot of, it's funny because there's a number of examples like that.
Sure.
I'd say that that's the most profound one, but there's a whole graveyard of projects that were in that this is what you should do next. Because what sort of happens if you have any success, at least in my business, and I imagine this might translate to other people, is to make your first film and maybe to start your first company is a sheer act of will, of pushing a single rock up a mountain and then sort of pushing it over the edge. And if it works, then what happens? So the first film is like an act of obsession.
Yeah.
The second film, though, or maybe the second company, is an act of discernment. And it can be really complicated to know what's what, because now you have a bunch of people in success who are looking at what you've done. They're like, oh, I know what I could do with that. Right? I know what I could do with that artist. Come through my door. This is who you really are. You should walk through this one. And there's a whole hallway of them, and it goes on forever. Yeah. And it can get very, very confusing. And it's very enticing, because it's like you just went through that active obsession, that long struggle in obscurity. And now people are validating what you are, but they're also trying to commercialize it and extract things that are very deep and pure and create products out of you. And so I think it's really important in that period of discernment, kind of understand and identify a core purpose. I always say, you may have a mission statement for your business, but if you're starting a new business, what's the mission statement for that? I think you need an overarching purpose statement. Like, what is the mission statement for your life? And for me, I have had one since 2008 that hasn't changed. But it's not constricting. I think it's very broad, but it allows me to sort of look at every opportunity and just check it against what am I trying to bring into the world. And for me, it's to tell stories of human connection in impossible places. And maybe distilled a little bit further is like, where's the light? Pursuing things, like not being shy of telling stories in darkness and about really tough worlds, but are you bringing light into the world with your work?
Right.
And so there's a lot of stuff that comes across my desk, and it always get like, every couple of years we put a movie out, and then everyone in Hollywood's like, "Oh, you exist again," and like, "Oh my god," and so you get sent a bunch of things and a bunch of scripts. You meet a million people, and then they forget about you, and then it sort of it happens again. And I think having that filter is really crucial. I think especially for your impatient entrepreneurs, like, if you get a success, the next time, like, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be reaching out that want to partner with you, that want to work, that bring you ideas that you really need to think about. What is that? What's driving, what's animating, my being to create.
Yeah. I love that. It's really good advice. Okay. So going back in time for when we were little ones, what is something that you felt like people told you was a weakness of yours, but today it's really turned into more of a superpower?
Well, that kind of relentless persistence, some might say like a fixation on things, but I laugh too because I have a 16-year-old son who embodies some of these traits that can drive me a little crazy. But then you see the strength though, because it's been said, and there's this, I don't know who it's attributed to, but about Hollywood is that, the ones who make it are the ones who last,
Yeah.
It is a game of attrition, and it crushes you. And it's oftentimes not fair. And there's people who don't have the best intentions, and it's hard to know who's real and who's not, what's real, what project is real and what project is not. And what that can create inside of people is it can breed cynicism, and turn you bitter. And I think that's the thing that you have to fight the most, is to protect that childlike love for it, And so I'm constantly balancing that competitive drive, maybe put that put that further define the persistence thing. I'm a very competitive person. Sometimes to a fault, and sometimes making competitions out of things that should not be competition. that could, that you could just, and I I have some friends who don't have that drive, and have built this really beautiful life of like not being the striver achievers that need to conquer everything in their path. And they're just like, we have our house, we have our family, we have our paychecks, we have lives outside of work that are
how very European of them.
that a lot of meaning comes from. And I really think about it a lot. I'm like, it's beautiful, acknowledging the beauty of that. And even like if you think about it from an entrepreneur standpoint, I think it is in me, and I can't get that this drive is part of who I am, and I'm not ashamed of it. And I think I have a purpose to do some big things with this platform that's building for a good purpose. And I feel the responsibility of that. But what I try to take from that other path, that is to see its purpose too, and what can we learn from the people who aren't the conquerors, and I think it's about process, versus results. There's this quote from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Actually, I read it like right after college when people read that book, and that sort of existential 20s moment. But it's applicable today to me now. I think about it all the time, which is to live for some distant future goal is shallow. It's the sides of a mountain that sustain life, not the top. And in a competitive business, that oftentimes, like, anoints movies and things with trophies and, all that at the end of the year through a completely subjective, decision-making process.
Yeah.
You just have to start to look more about the work being enough. The work is the work, is the work, is the work.
Yep. I love that. I feel like you've laid a lot of knowledge on us today, Greg.
Been stacking it all up for when my sister would finally invite me.
Yes, finally, yes. My first
pulling it all out of the bag.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I could do a whole season just interviewing you. Oh, well, you've given us a lot to think about today, certainly. Do you have any other particular advice that you feel like someone could do right now, today, to make their lives or businesses or projects or dreams stronger and better?
Sure. I would say don't keep it at arm's length. Probably most people who are listening have a day job, and this is some big dream of theirs, to finally step out on their own and to make something, at least I deal with that a lot of the people that I advise and mentor who are, have these dreams of being filmmakers or writers or directors. And I always just say, well, pick a start date to make your film.
Yeah.
It's not sometime in the future. It's not next spring, maybe. It's not, at some point in 2026, it's May 3rd, 24.
Yeah.
And because what it starts to create is this authentic sense of urgency. And also what it starts to, people want to be a part of a train that's leaving the station. When you're saying, will you maybe do something with me in the future I'm doing something. Do you want to come with me?
Yeah. Big difference.
Yeah.
When I was starting my company, I was working with a coach, and I had a baby at the same time. And so I was just sort of coming out of this fog in the early part of 2018, working with her and getting my business kind of going. And I was working on my website, and she said, on March 24th or whatever day it was, you're going to launch it and you're going to tell everyone that you've done what you've done. Like, that was my assignment, was picking a date and doing it. And, I'm not sure what would have happened if I hadn't had someone saying, this is the date, this is day dot, this is when it's happening. And you have to pull back the curtain and be like, whatever it looks like, doesn't matter, but you have to go. And I think that's great advice. Just go.
Just go.
Oh gosh. Well, so wrapping up, where can I'll put all this in the show notes as well, but where can people find you online? Where can they watch your movies? How can people connect with you?
I have a website, gregkwedar.com, and that just lists you can read a little bit about the different movies that I've been a part of, and then figure out how to watch them. I was just trying to think, does it actually link you to where to watch them? No, but I think we all have Google, and we can. Really
I use IMDb for things like that.
Yeah. Or justwatch.com is something I use for movie titles that I'm trying to figure out, where is it streaming, or do I need to rent this? And that's really good for that.
Okay. Good to know. Cool. Yeah. Well, and hopefully Sing Sing will be coming to a theater near you.
Yes. I hope so too.
Well, I love you very much. Yeah, thank you for coming on today.
It was a joy.
Thanks for listening to The Impatient Entrepreneur. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague, or give us a 5-star review on Apple. You can also chat with us on Instagram or Facebook at The Impatient Entrepreneur Pod. Want to star on a future episode? Head over to theimpatienttrepreneurpod.com to inquire. Thank you to the team at Kwedar & Co. for believing in me and bringing this podcast to life. And thank you to Carson Childers for mixing and editing this episode. Can't wait to see you next time.